Hey, Brett.
What? He spoke to her out the window, said something about, hey, you wanna let's smoke some weed?
And she walked out. We all saw her walk out, and that's the last time I saw her.
Where she was in the back of the truck. Yeah. She bleeding at all.
On April 22nd, 2009, high school senior and star soccer player Brittanee Drexel asked her mom if she could spend the night at a friend's house. She'd been arguing with her mom for the past 2 days and wanted to get some space to let things cool down. It was spring break for Brittanee, and her mother was refusing to let her join her friends on a trip to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Seeing as she was just 17 years old at the time, her mother was apprehensive to let her go. She knew that the friends she'd be going with had a reputation for partying quite frequently, but to Brittanee this was more than just a vacation. It was a chance to escape the emotional turmoil that she had been dealing with recently. You see, her mom had just gotten divorced from the man that Brittanee viewed as a father, and her mom knew how hard it was for her, so she agreed to drop Brittanee off to spend the night at her friend's house. Little did she know, that would be the last time she would ever see her daughter alive. A few days later, her mom received a call that no parent ever wants to hear. It was Brittanee's boyfriend, letting her know that she had gone to Myrtle Beach behind her back and was now missing. Her final moments were caught on camera before seemingly vanishing into thin air, leaving behind a series of clues that left investigators and eventually the entire nation shocked and confused for over a decade. It wouldn't be until 2022 that the disturbing full picture of what actually happened that night would be revealed, with even more sickening details revealed earlier this year in 2024 that finally put an end to the harrowing case of Brittanee Drexel. But first, let's take a step back to see how we got here. Today's case takes us back to April 2009. Spring break had just begun for high schoolers in the small town of Chile, located just outside of Rochester, New York. For 17-year-old Brittanee Drexel, this was a welcome time of relief from the stress of her senior year of high school. You see, Brittanee was a star soccer player and had always been seen as a tremendously kind and warm-hearted person. She had a great relationship with her boyfriend and had dreams of becoming a veterinarian after graduating high school. However, in recent months, her emotional well-being took a downturn after her mother filed for divorce from the man that Brittanee viewed as her father, a former member of the military named Chad. Brittanee's mom and biological father, John, were only teenagers when they gave birth to her, and while they did their best to raise her as teen parents, they ended up breaking up and going their separate ways. John drifted apart from Brittanee and was absent for most of her life. However, things changed when Brittanee's mother met Chad, so much so that he offered to formally adopt Brittanee, memorializing the fatherly role that he played in her life. As such, when Dawn decided to divorce him in 2008, Brittanee was understandably devastated. She began withdrawing from the world and becoming less of the bubbly person that she was known for being. This led to her attempting to take her own life by overdosing on her mother's medications on 2 separate occasions, a move that her father John would later describe as a call for help. Fortunately, her attempt was unsuccessful and she was able to recover, but she continued trying to find ways to ease the emotional turmoil that she was experiencing. She began hanging out with a new group of friends who were a bit older than her and started drinking and partying more frequently, which led to her grades falling. Wanting to escape her problems for a while, Brittanee and her friends planned a trip to Myrtle Beach to spend their spring break partying, but her mother refused to let her go, as she just did not feel safe letting her daughter travel over 800 miles with no adult supervision around. The thought of missing out while her friends are partying their spring breakaway angered Brittanee. She took out her frustration on her mom as the two of them argued for days on end. Seeking to cool things down between them, Brittanee asked if she could spend the night over at a friend's house, to which her mother said yes, But little did her mother know that would be the last time she would ever see her daughter alive, because Brittanee had no intention of having an innocent sleepover there. That same day, she and her friends left for Myrtle Beach without her mother knowing. Dawn would later recall having a bad feeling about the idea of her daughter going on this trip, not realizing that in that exact moment, Brittanee was already halfway across the country. And as we'll soon find out, her feelings were tragically proven right. 3 whole days passed until the group arrived at their hotel.
I believe that they had gotten there sometime Thursday morning. Thursday evening, they went to a club. On Friday, we had some people come forward and tell us that Brittanee was on the beach that day and she was playing volleyball.
Brittanee gave her mom a call and let her know that she was at the beach. The only thing is, she didn't tell her which beach she was referring to. At the time, her mother thought she meant the Lake Ontario beach, which was located just 20 minutes away from where they lived in New York, not realizing that her daughter was actually in a totally different state.
I talked to her that day. I asked her where she was, and she said that she was at the beach. You know, it was 80 degrees in Rochester, so I figured she was there. I asked her what she was doing. She said, we're just going to go watch movies later. And that was the last time I talked to her.
And you think she's still there in town?
That is correct.
You have no idea she's 14 hours away at Myrtle Beach at spring break.
As it turns out, Dawn had good reason for not wanting Brittanee to go on this trip. You see, everyone in this friend group was a bit older than her and they loved to party. Brittanee didn't shy away from joining her friends in drinking. However, she reportedly didn't consume nearly as much as the others. Over the course of the night, she started to separate herself from the group.
Hey, Brett.
What?
She went out onto the balcony by herself to get some alone time and text her boyfriend. The two were texting nonstop throughout the trip, since he wasn't able to come with them due to him having to work over spring break. Instead, they decided to keep each other updated at all times. Keep this in mind, as it will be important later. At around 8 p.m., Brittanee decided to leave the group and meet up with another friend that was staying in Myrtle Beach at the same time as her.
Peter, she knew him from back home.
That is correct. She's
She
known
didn't
him
go down
for
there
about
with
3 or 4 years, yes.
With nobody alongside her other than her boyfriend that she was texting, she embarked alone on the 1.5-mile walk to her friend's hotel. She was spotted by a street camera at 8:20 p.m. and arrived at the hotel around 8 minutes later. CCTV footage captured her arriving at the hotel, carrying a beige purse and wearing a black and white tank top, flip-flops, and shorts. She decided not to stay long as cameras clocked her departure at around 8:45 p.m. This would be the last time anyone saw Brittanee alive.
Hey, it's Brett. Leave a message and I'll get back to you soon.
Brittanee's boyfriend immediately became concerned due to how abruptly she stopped responding to his texts. He texted her just 15 minutes after she left the hotel to ask if everything was okay.
I knew that something was up about 10 to 20 minutes later, but a half an hour later was when I really began to start freaking out. I knew that there was a problem.
He then turned to Brittanee's mother, who was still completely unaware that she had even left to begin with. Dawn's worst fears became a reality as she discovered that her daughter is now missing without a single clue as to where she could have gone. She swiftly contacted law enforcement, and a missing persons investigation ensued the following morning. Days go by. The Myrtle Beach Police Department launched an extensive search but found no significant leads. Brittanee's family grew frustrated with the lack of progress.
It's been horrible because I don't know where she is. I don't know if she's alive. She left all her clothing. It's just not like Brittanee. Something's wrong.
How could investigators not have a single lead, despite having footage of her just minutes before disappearing? As public outrage mounted, the case quickly became a national story and soon drew the attention of the FBI. But even with the FBI's involvement, Years passed by with little to no new developments. At this point, people all across America were invested in the case. Given the mysterious nature of her disappearance, the public grew increasingly suspicious of the people closest to Brittanee leading up to her going missing.
I know just as much as the rest of the media. Like I said, the media twists everything that's going on. You weren't there. I was there with 4 other people, and I'm the one that's singled out.
There's times where it becomes hard because you run into dead ends, but as far as the family goes and as far as staying in contact with the family and the police department, that'll continue until she's found.
And despite never being named as suspects by investigators, Brittanee's mother, Dawn, her biological father, John, and her adopted father, Chad, all became targets in the public's eye. Yet they remained steadfast in their mission to find Brittanee and bring her home.
She got into a fight with her friends when she was down there. I was telling her just to have a good time and try to enjoy the time that she had left.
He was there with family, searching for Brittanee from the very beginning. And 2 years later, he wears a constant reminder of her.
Right now I'm wearing her ring, and pretty much there is nothing in my house that doesn't remind me of her.
Dawn even went as far as to permanently relocate to Myrtle Beach to be closer to where her daughter had last been seen and to better monitor the progress of the investigation. But was the public actually justified in their suspicions?
Is there a possibility here that she just ran away?
No, I don't believe she just ran away. And she was going through a lot because my soon-to-be ex-husband, we're going through a divorce. So this has been very hard on her.
On the 5-year anniversary of her disappearance, Dawn stated in a 2014 newspaper article that she theorized that Brittanee went to Myrtle Beach because she had been promised something of interest. You see, Dawn believed that she was offered a modeling gig but ended up being trafficked. The Myrtle Beach police did not agree with her assessment, though, and claimed that very little trafficking takes place in their jurisdiction. However, a 2019 report conducted by the South Carolina Human Trafficking Task Force rated it as the #1 county in South Carolina for human trafficking. Dawn's theory would have to wait for quite a while to be validated. Fast forward to 2016. The FBI held a press conference stating that they had reason to believe that Brittanee Drexel had been murdered shortly after her disappearance. Their working theory was that she had been abducted near the hotel she was visiting in Myrtle Beach and taken somewhere in the vicinity of Georgetown before being killed there. Given that this is where the final pings from her cell phone had ended, the FBI believed that her body was likely located in that region. They announced a $25,000 reward for any information that could lead to the case being solved. And just 2 months later, they uncovered some new information.
We believe she traveled to this area around McClellanville, and we believe she was killed after that.
Earlier that year, an FBI agent testified that an inmate named Taquan Brown told him that he had visited a stash house outside of Myrtle Beach in 2009. Brown gave a vivid description of what he saw at that stash house, claiming that he witnessed Brittanee being sexually assaulted by a man named Timothy Taylor while others were present. Brown then made his way to the backyard, where just minutes later he saw Brittanee try to run and escape before being recaptured. He then claimed that Timothy pistol whipped her before dragging her back inside. Shortly after, he heard 2 gunshots go off inside the stash house. He believed that the shots were the sound of Brittanee being killed, as he claims to have seen a wrapped body being carried out and dumped into a pond filled with alligators nearby. Brown's statement was partially corroborated by another informant, who also claimed that Timothy Taylor picked up Brittanee in Myrtle Beach and took her to McClellanville. The second informant alleged that Timothy showed her off to his friends before trying to sell her to them for trafficking purposes. But as the case gained media attention, Timothy decided to kill her to avoid being connected to the crime. But there were some glaring holes in these allegations. For one, Timothy was born with just one arm and was not physically imposing by any means. And despite being in jail at the time, he did not necessarily have a history of violent behavior, as he was arrested for acting as the getaway driver in a 2011 robbery of a McDonald's restaurant. Even more importantly, Brittanee's body was never actually found. This meant that investigators couldn't rule out the possibility that she was still alive somewhere, possibly being held captive or living under a new name. And if Brittanee had been killed, not having the body meant that medical examiners couldn't conduct crucial analysis that would shed light on what happened, such as how exactly did she die? Was it an intentional homicide or tragic accident? And perhaps most importantly, who was the culprit? As such, the validity of this tip relied solely on hearsay from other inmates. This type of evidence is notoriously unreliable, as jail informants are often incentivized to embellish the truth or flat out lie if it means reducing their time in jail. And that proved to be true, as many inconsistencies were found in the informant's statements over the coming months. For example, in a 2019 telephone interview that Brown gave from jail, he claimed that he had actually seen Brittanee 4 times after her disappearance. Initially, he claimed to have witnessed her murder the very first time he saw her, but according to his new timeline, the first time he saw Brittanee was 2 days after her disappearance, when he witnessed her being sexually assaulted by a group of 8 to 12 men at the stash house. A few days later, he saw her again, which was when he heard the gunshots in the building, followed by a body being carried out in a rug, as he initially described to the FBI. His third time seeing her was 5 days later, when he saw Brittanee on a rural dirt road near his cousin's house, a whole 80 miles away from the stash house. And his final encounter with her was in late May, near his cousin's house again, and it was then when he witnessed her being murdered by a man named Nate, who he claims shot her twice with a double-barreled shotgun. While some aspects of his story were at least partially corroborated, no one was able to find the man, Nate, who allegedly killed Brittanee, nor were any other witnesses identified. As a result, many activists viewed it as a witch hunt and thought the cops were pinning the case on Timothy Taylor. With no other suspects to go off of, Brittanee's family and the public were essentially back to square one.
We need your help so we can find Brittanee's remains and bring her home to lay her to rest.
Hope was dwindling, until shocking new developments emerged in 2022, a full 13 years after Brittanee's disappearance. Meet 62-year-old Raymond Moody, a registered sex offender with a lengthy criminal history, including previously being convicted for abducting and sexually assaulting a minor named Carrie Harding.
Carrie Harding was only 8 years old when she was abducted by Raymond Moody.
Just as I passed, he grabbed me from behind, put his hand over my mouth and around my waist, and put me in the passenger seat of the car.
Moody served 21 years of a 40-year prison sentence after admitting to sexually assaulting Harding and 6 other girls. He relocated to Georgetown after his release from California State Prison in 2004.
In early May of 2022, Raymond turned himself in to the Georgetown County Sheriff's Office due to an obstruction of justice charge that he was facing. Surprisingly, Raymond had been named as a person of interest in Brittanee Drexel's disappearance as early as 2012. Yet, law enforcement did not have conclusive evidence to prove he was the culprit.
Here's former News 13 reporter Mason Snyder confronting now confessed Brittanee Drexel killer Raymond Moody, August 1st, 2011.
Do you know anything about the missing teenager?
No, I do not.
Can you tell us where you were back in April of '09?
You know what? I'm gonna call the police in a second. You better split. Can you just tell us where you were in April of 09? I got nothing to say to you. You understand that?
Do you know?
Moody pointed authorities to where the body was buried. Over the next 3 days, the FBI excavated the site until finding human remains buried in the woods off of a gated private driveway near Georgetown. Her body was buried about 4 feet deep into the ground. DNA testing and dental records confirmed it was Brittanee Drexel. The warrant that led to Raymond Moody's arrest alleged that he had strangled her to death and buried her on the morning of April 26, 2009.
When you buried her, was she in one piece? Was she in pieces? Mm-hmm.
No, she was a full cat.
Okay. You said you didn't cause any extra injuries?
No.
Oh, any broken bones? Or
No.
Okay.
Do you know how you did it? How you strangled her? There's a couple different ways, obviously, you can strangle somebody, just like that.
And she was in, when you transport, she was in the back of your truck?
Yep.
Like in the bed?
Yep.
Wrapped in the blanket?
Yep.
And
Was she bleeding at all?
He would end up being charged with murder, kidnapping, and first-degree criminal sexual misconduct, all alleged to have occurred on the day of Brittanee's disappearance. Raymond Moody pled guilty to all charges on October 19th of 2022 and was sentenced to life in prison with an additional 2 consecutive terms of 30 years.
I don't have the words to express how horrible I feel. And I've felt ever since that day very, very sorry.
After all these years, Brittanee's family finally got closure.
It is bittersweet, and we have a little more closure than what we wanted. Weighing this all out is tough on a dad, tough on a mother.
But this case doesn't end there. 2 years after Raymond's sentencing, his longtime girlfriend Angel Vause would be charged with lying to law enforcement. She also claimed that Brittanee voluntarily joined them to use marijuana and cocaine, when in reality she was abducted under false pretenses.
So just go ahead and I'll give you the opportunity. You just tell us what you remember about that time.
All right, me and him had went to the beach. We were in my vehicle, of course. We had smoked weed on the way up there while we were there, you know, stuff like that. Then afterwards, we rode down the boulevard. He hollers him out the window. What he exactly said, I don't remember. She hollered something back, but couldn't hear. There's a lot of traffic. So he pulled up a little bit. He pulled over to a little parking lot on the side of the road. She walked over to the car. He spoke to her out the window, said something like, hey, you want to let's smoke some weed, do a line or two, you know, and she said yes. She got into the vehicle, came back towards Georgetown, really just smoking along the way, you know, stuff like that. Went down to the pole yard, walked around a little bit smoking. A little bit later, called my son, or he called me, I can't remember who called who, but he had the keys to the apartment. So I said I'll be back in a little while.
While all of this information would have been much more useful to investigators at the beginning of the case, Brittanee Drexel's family can finally get the closure they deserve, knowing that justice has been served. Dawn stated, quote, I don't think you ever get closure with losing a child, but I think it's a resolution to what happened, and she will pay dearly for what she did to my daughter. Having been wrongfully accused in this high-profile murder case, Timothy Taylor was waiting outside the courtroom for both Angel Vause and Raymond Moody's trials. He has since sued the Department of Justice over investigative missteps and false narratives spread by the FBI, and his family is demanding an apology from authorities. Barring any future litigation from Timothy Taylor or any other people involved in this case, it appears that the disappearance of Brittanee Drexel has finally been wrapped up, after 15 long years from when she first went missing, with many dead ends and false hopes along the way. But what do you think of this case? Do you think authorities should have tried to arrest Raymond Moody sooner? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section down below. And be sure to like and subscribe to Crime Bumps for more deep dives into disturbing true crime cases. As a small channel, it truly goes a long way. Until then, take care, and I'll see you in the next video.